welcome back. This is episode number 2, Dirty Air Podcast, your number one NASCAR podcast, DFS gambling related, all that stuff. Jason Hamlet, DFS NASCAR, he is still here. Jason, say hi.
Yo, hey, I just want to apologize to everybody in advance. The kids are going to be running around upstairs. I'm sure you're going to hear the kids yelling and screaming. You're probably going to hear the wife yelling and screaming at the kids, and maybe eventually the wife yelling and screaming at me once she realizes I'm not down here working and down here doing a podcast. So,
well, I think I can speak on behalf of the people. As long as you give out some winners, we'll worry about the kids later.
Well, we'll try our best. Educated guess.
And as last week, Brandon Cruz DFS. Brandon, say hi.
Howdy.
So actually, I'll start with you, Brandon, because we had a lot of inquiries. That's a word I can never say. Over the past week after the podcast that came out, I guess the past couple of days, because we're doing mainly Cup on here. But some people curious about some of the driver changes, some equipment changes down in Xfinity and trucks. Because we covered kind of that at the Cup level, but not as much Xfinity and trucks. I know you've done some of that with some videos and some material. So where can they find that kind of information?
Yeah, so not only do I cover the Cup Series, I also cover the Truck Series and the Xfinity Series on my YouTube channel, Brandon Cruz DFS. You can find, I already have some videos up for the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, the Cup Series, a couple of podcasts with Race of the Prize talking about lap data for the Cup Series and different things. So if you're looking for more information or some more preseason stuff to get you ready for this next week, you can find it on my channel.
Perfect. And Jason, I know you're not just Cup 2, so where can they find some of your other stuff as well?
I can find all my content always at freenascardfs.com. Pretty simple. That's where everything goes for me. So.
And then I know we had mentioned, we talked off air a little bit, that you doing some live streams before some of the slates and everything. Had a couple people ask me about that. One, if they're coming back. I know maybe not necessarily every single slate, but for when you do the live streams, what can they expect in them?
No, I typically do them about a couple hours before lock of the races. I plan on definitely doing it this year. It's going to be pretty popular. I'm probably not going to be able to do it for Daytona week, unfortunately. I know. My wife's scheduled my son's birthday party on the Daytona 500 weekend, so that's going to be kind of brutal for me because we're having it in Ohio too, so we got to make a little trip. So that'll be fun. So no,
but it's always family, family first, right?
Obviously, yes.
All right. So with that being said, now that we've taken care of that, let's get into the Busch Clash, which is next Tuesday night. I believe it's the 9th, under the lights. And for the first time ever, I believe, it's on the road course. So there's 24 eligible drivers. There's a couple different ways of how you can get into it. You could have won the pole last year, past Busch Clash winners that were full-time last year, past Daytona 500 champions that were full-time last year. Former Daytona 500 pole champions, a couple of different ways of doing it. Winning stages, winning playoff, making the playoffs. All
everybody.
When it's all said and done,
everybody's in it.
Yeah, everybody who kind of somewhat matters. Actually, we'll get into that in a second. 24 eligible drivers, expecting 21 because we'll have no Boyer, no Jimmy Johnson, no Kenseth as they are no longer full time this year. And then the one change, so the one driver of note that isn't in it is Bubba Wallace, who did not qualify. So Ty Dillon is expected to drive that number 23 car, which I guess will be kind of cool, Jason, because you might just to get to see what that equipment's going to be like. Obviously, it's a road course, so it's still different. But what kind of equipment they're really going to put in that 2311 even before Bubba hops in it. I think Ty's kind of, Bubba might be a driver that, from what I see as a casual fan, may have a higher upside, but Ty just kind of seems like a very conservative, good choice to put in a car and, see what it can do for you.
Well, and Ty is actually a pretty decent road course racer, at least on some of these more Roval type races like the Daytona Road Course. So he's been pretty consistent there. I like Ty Dillon this week, depending on where he draws at. I don't think I do like him as much if he draws back towards the back because everybody's going to be on him, and the 23 car is probably going to be cheap. So it's probably going to draw pretty high ownership, but I think Ty could be sneaky depending on where he qualifies at or gets drawn to, which that happens on Monday. I don't know if we spoke about that.
Oh yeah, I guess we should talk about that. So the qualifying that'll happen on Monday. Later in the pod, we'll go through some ifs and buts and do that kind of stuff. But Brandon, what are your initial thoughts on this the Clash first time on the road course?
Well, look, and this is going to kind of come back to what Jason just said about Ty, or kind of adding on to his answer there. But we already know that this Clash is pretty much a glorified practice session. And I know you're like, hey, that you're being kind of harsh. You're killing the season. The expectation, the opener. But that's what it is. I mean, if you look, the Clash package and the Week 2 Daytona Road Course package will both be the low downforce. The Cup Series ran the high downforce package at this track last year. So this is basically the practice session for the teams that are in the Clash for an actual points paying race, because this Clash doesn't pay anything. Nobody's making any money. You can argue that, that the winner is getting, probably 160,000. But nobody's really getting anything from this other than practice. You already had Keselowski and DiBenedetto hint that, hey, this Clash is going to be a practice session. Don't expect us to race full out. And coming back to Ty Dillon, I think that's exactly why we're seeing Ty Dillon in this race, because he won that stage last year. He's locked in. Obviously, Bubba Wallace is not locked in for 2311 Racing, so I assume they're putting him into that car to not even really race, just shake the car down. Try and get it ready for Bubba in 2 weeks. Just get everything going. I don't expect Ty to do anything, and we're going to break it down more as we get through this podcast, but it's pretty much going to be you're choosing between 8 drivers, as I imagine over half of the field is not really going to race and just use it as a test session.
So, and I guess you kind of touched on it briefly, and a question that I've gotten from a couple people since Ty has been announced in this. Obviously, for the most part, a full-time driver drives that car all the time. With COVID, you never know. We saw it last year of not having to do it. Is this tell you that if they need a backup for Bubba at some point that it's Ty, or is this, like you said, he's just a decent road course driver, so he's trying to shake out this car, or does this tell you that he's kind of the backup to Bubba if they need?
I don't think he's necessarily the backup to Bubba. I just think he's the best driver that they were able to get, just because he's not locked into a ride for any of the series.
Yeah, and plus the people who are qualified, who are eligible for the Clash is limited. So if they want somebody to drive it, it's got to be somebody like Ty. And I think he's the only one who is without a ride, aside from bringing back somebody who's retired.
So, all right, Brandon, I'll start with you on the first question. Let's keep this simple. So, road course. How do you attack a road course? And obviously, we'll get into all the other types of courses later between super speedways and ovals of intermediates and short tracks and all of that. But in terms of a road course from a DFS perspective, how do you attack it differently than other courses?
Well, and I'm sure we'll get into this question more often when we look at the other 7 races in this, but we almost have to attack this specific race in a completely different fashion, because normally you attack a road course, you look at the top half of the field. Obviously there'll be place differential here and there, but you look to just get as many drivers who can finish in the top 10 as possible, since you don't have nearly as many fast laps and lap sled points as you would at like a 1.5 mile or short track. So normally you just look at the top half of the field or the top half of the cars and choose from there. Whereas in this race, we only have 21 cars. So this would usually be those 21 cars in your player pool, the guys you would look at to start the race. So here, if depending on how you're going to attack it, you have to see what's the likelihood of people, A, leading laps, B, getting place differential, and C, finishing well. And whoever fits into that category the best, that's who I would argue just to play.
So, Jason, to feed off of that, and I'll ask you this question so I don't have to say the word to Brandon that he doesn't want to have to hear. In this race, Brandon kind of briefly talked about it. What's the importance of the dominating points versus place differential, and especially, like Brandon had mentioned, that it is only 21 cars?
Well, I mean, the thing about road courses, you get a lot less laps, especially this one being a much shorter race, 35 laps. You're only looking at 24.5 Dom points available just to be spread out for this race. So not a ton of points there. And then also with a position differential, road courses tend to be some of the lowest, have the lowest variance of position differential out of all the types of tracks. I mean, if we look at road courses just in general, it's hard to pass. I think over the last 5 road course races, the average quality passes per driver was like 13. So that means like on average, their driver's only passing about 13, making 13 good passes on the track, and that's in a long race. So I expect to see a lot less in a much shorter race. And also, you got to think with this short format, the stages be split into a 15 lap and a 20 lap shootout on the end. You're not going to have these swings as far as pit stop strategy is concerned. That tends to be how a lot of PD swings happen on these road courses, is people short pitting at the right opportune time and jumping up a bunch of spots. They're not doing it by passing a ton of cars on the track, generally speaking. So like I said, if they're allowed to pit before the caution, the stage before the end of the first stage, I guess, if they're allowed to pit before that, everybody will. No one's going to stay out. There's no reason to stay out, or they'll all pit at the caution. So I don't think you're going to see that play into the factor. As far as Dom points, as far as how important they are, when we just talked about like how little PD I believe there's going to be, also there's only 21 cars, so it's not a lot of room anyway there. So I think Dom points are going to be pretty important, even if you're only getting 10 or 12 out of a guy. That's still going to be pretty significant considering there's not a lot of PD and other than points to go around in general. But it's mostly going to be about those top 5, top 10 finishers like Brandon touched on.
Okay, and so if we start getting into the drivers a little bit, from the casual fan perspective, from my point of view, Brandon, the 3 guys that I think of at the top when it comes to road courses are Chase, Denny, and Truex. Is that kind of the 3 top, or is there anybody else you would add or subtract from that list?
Yeah, those would be the 3 guys that I would look at. I know that we have the lap data from the Daytona Road Course last season, but as I said, that's in a different package. But even though it's in a different package, I would look at that race to see how well people got through the field and see if they kind of staggered at a certain position or if they kept improving their lap time or at least going through the field, regardless if they finished in the top 10 or not. We just need to see who was able to get through traffic, because if they can get through traffic and if they can get through a big field, they should be one of the favorite cars to either pass through the field. Say, if I hate using Chase Elliott as the example, but you kind of have to here. If Chase Elliott starts 18th, there's a good chance he finishes in the top 3. If he starts in the top 5, there's a good chance he finishes in the top 5. So you need to, once we have the starting positions and everything, you need to look at each driver and see how well they're going to get through the field. And once you get that done, you realize, okay, do I need to target them for place differential, or am I targeting them for laps led at fast laps? Because I don't imagine anyone other than, say, Elliott starting the back or Hamlin starting the back, I don't imagine somebody's going to have both laps led and place differential unless it's just a car that's a favorite starting knee deep in the field.
So Jason, I guess the second part of that question, which I'll throw to you, what other drivers, just in terms of road courses, not necessarily just for this race, but for road courses going forward, can we look at as being some decent road course drivers to use in DFS?
Well, I think the most important thing to realize, right? So, if we're playing GPP this week, we already talked, it's going to be a low variance type style race. It's not going to be a lot of people wrecking out. So you can kind of eat a little bit of chalk. I think Chase is going to be a must play, probably, and most likely. I think that the scenario where you don't play Chase, or where it might make sense to not play Chase, is if he is starting between 7th and 12th, because you're not giving up a lot of PD upside to fade him, and there's probably not a ton of Dom upside there when he starts there. So, in that instance, it might make sense. But as far as these other drivers, I think it's important to think, if you're going to play Chase and you're going to eat that chalk, it's pretty much a lock that Denny and Martin Truex are going to be the second and third highest owned drivers. So you got to pivot off of those. And I like guys like Kyle Busch. Kyle ran. I know he had a rough outing here at the road course last year, but he was actually running well. First 2 laps he was competing for the lead when he flat spotted his tire twice to the bus stop. And then, obviously, he was able to rebound and was back fighting for a top 5 before he spun out again around that same area. And then we all know how the rest of that happened. And he actually, if you look, anybody who's looking at his road courses finishes over the last recency is terrible. But we all know Kyle Busch is a good road course racer. I think this would set up as a good spot, especially if he qualifies in that same range I was talking about Chase. He's going to be very low owned. So I like exploiting him. I don't like playing him as much if he's starting further in the back because I think he is a higher variance driver who a lot of people will be on then, and it doesn't make sense to play that high variance driver when there's a lot of guys on there. Um, but yeah, Kyle's one. Kurt is always pretty sneaky on these road courses as well. I definitely like Kurt. Like I said, I'm really looking to target those guys this week who are starting in that 6th to like 12th place range. That's where I'm looking to get that ownership leverage.
So, and Brandon, talking about some of the other guys, I know it's hard to kind of talk exactly about ownerships when we don't really have salaries and everything. We did talk at the top. The top, those three guys should be the highest owned. Chase, I would assume Chase is the highest owned. And then obviously price doesn't matter, but I would assume Truex is probably the second highest owned, and Denny is the third highest owned out of those guys. But looking at what we can kind of project towards the bottom of the field, I would say salary wise, maybe, or at least towards the middle. A couple guys that pop out, at least to me, in terms of some decent race course drivers are McDowell and Chris Buescher. Sorry, Chris Buescher.
Oh yeah, yes. Sorry.
Chris Buescher, yeah. So Buescher is one of those guys that I think he may have had, I don't know if it was last year or 2 years ago, I do think he had a top 5 at some point, but seems to be a guy that in a general road race kind of is a top 20 kind of driver. What are your thoughts on Chris Buescher on a road track?
Let's see. I believe he had good speed at the road course. Let me try and bring up his lap data really quick here.
Yes,
Let me just
have
look
the same data you do.
Okay, let's look at his lap times.
53% in the top 15. It looks like.
Yeah, where's Chris? Let me control F here. Where you at, Chris? Let's see. Chris Buescher had the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He had the 5th. Wait a minute. He finished 5th. He had the 20th fastest lap on average, and he was able to drove through the field, I believe. Let me look. Yeah, because he started 21st. Yeah, and then he was able to drive through the field, and he was running pretty much 13th the last stage of the race. The last last half of the race, he's a top 20 driver in terms of his position, his speed. I'm not really concerned about his speed at the road course, but seeing that he was running, 16th mainly during stage 2, during stage 3 he was running 13th, 10th. Fell back to 19th on one lap, then worked his way back up to 11th. I mean, he has the talent. Looking at this, he has the speed to get through the field and to pass people. And like I just said earlier, that's what you want to see. It's not necessarily how fast they were going, but were they able to get by people in traffic? So he would fill the role of somebody I'd want to target. Looking at DraftKings coming up to the Clash, I would have to imagine that DraftKings is going to price everybody up because we're going to get salaries before we get the Clash, the grid, because that comes out Monday p.m. and obviously you can't release salaries, less than 24 hours before. I'm not saying you can't, but it wouldn't make it wouldn't be a smart decision for DraftKings to do that. So I imagine we're going to get salaries either right after the Super Bowl or Monday morning. Because of that, I imagine a lot of people are going to be priced up. So we're going to see Elliott really high. We'll probably see Buescher probably in the high 7s or low 8s. And I know that probably sounds crazy, but you don't want, if you're DraftKings, you don't want to have him too low to where Buescher, for an example, someone that you don't really think is going to be good at road courses, or somebody that doesn't necessarily pop into your mind as a fast guy. You have to price him up, otherwise everybody's going to throw in the studs there. So Buescher should be a lower owned play, but I think we're actually going to end up overpaying for him in the long run.
And I think the listeners got a good look there at how my brain can only handle a certain amount of information, because I read Matt DiBenedetto's name and out of my mouth came Michael McDowell, which obviously nothing alike. But so Jason, I'll pass that second part of that question on to you now that I can say the right name. So DiBenedetto, Roval last year, he was, I think, 22nd, 23rd, something like that. But going back before that, I remember looking, because I remember we talked about this last year. Going back to the Roval in 2018, he had 5 consecutive top 15s, 2 top 10s. DiBenedetto seems like a pretty decent road course driver. Is that kind of a good take, or should I not have that take?
I think Matt DiBenedetto, he's better on the more natural road course races. If we look, I mean, he's not terrible, obviously, on these Roval type tracks, but I think his better runs have came at like Sonoma or Watkins Glen even. I don't think.
Yeah. So pulling it up.
Sorry.
No, you got it, but yeah, I mean, you pretty much nailed it because, like you said, the Roval and the road courses. So last year was 22nd and 15, 11th at the Roval the year before. In 2018, the Roval he was 13th, but then when you look at Watkins Glen and Sonoma, it's 6th and 4th. So still not bad finishes at the other kind of road courses, but I think you're spot on that the other, his bread and his butter are the Watkins Glen, the Sonoma, the more, the not half oval or quarter oval, whatever they call these road courses. So yeah.
Yeah, and even if we look at, I mean, this year at the Roval, I know it was not a great run, but he only ran 22% of his laps were the top 15 laps. The good thing is he knows how to pass cars. 30 quality passes at the road course, the Daytona Road Course last year. 21 at the Roval last year. So we just talked about the averages around 13 quality passes for a driver. So he's definitely above that. So, I mean, he definitely can move through the field. I just think he's a type who's probably going to stall out around like the top 10, top 8, somewhere around there, which will be great is if he's depending on where he starts, if he's going to be another guy who, if he starts in the back, if he starts 20th or whatnot, he's definitely going to be a higher owned guy. And I just don't think I would probably go a different route at that point. I'm really not going to be chasing the PD from the back of the field, if you catch the drift, because that's where everybody's going to gravitate to. And I just don't see a lot of people moving up to the field as quick unless it's those big guys, those guys who are steadily good. Your Chase Elliott's, your Denny Hamlins, your Martin Truexes. Those guys become virtual locks. But even Kevin Harvick, I think Kevin Harvick might be somebody who you want him starting top 5, because I think he can start top 5, he can run top 5, he can finish top 5. I'm not sold on if Harvick starting 20th, if he'll make top 5, may make top 10 within 35 laps,
Okay, so I think that leads perfectly kind of into the next segment, since you guys have already started to half kind of do what I was thinking of doing. But it's good because there's obviously not too much to talk about. So here's a little game that I created, and Jason kind of gave me part of the idea a little bit, but I kind of modified it. So this is what we're going to do. I got 3 questions. It's going to be a if blank and then a scenario, and you've got to fill in the blank with a driver. Now here's the catch. You can only use the driver's name once, and that's for both of you. So if somebody says Chase on the first one, nobody can use Chase for the other 6 answers. Truex, whatever, all that same. That's how we're gonna go. So okay. I'm gonna start with Jason. So I think Jason's kind of got at least an easy one on the first. So the first one, if blank starts on the pole, he is a must play.
If Chase Elliott starts on the pole, he's a must play.
So there's the free one. All right. So Jason's taking Chase on that first one. All right, Brandon. If blank starts on the pole, he is a must play.
Ryan Blaney.
I like that. That was one of the guys who I thought to myself, like, man, I would really like to see Blaney qualify on the pole, because I don't think a lot of people are going to be on him, and I think he could lead at least the first chunk of the race.
Okay, we're going to do this little snake draft, so we'll make it fair. So I'll give Brandon the first choice of the second one. If blank starts outside the top 12, he is a must play.
Oh man, I'm getting interrupted. Not me, not my phone, but
that was mine. Sorry, guys.
No, you're good. You scared me. I was like, what the heck?
He's trying to distract you so that he can get who he needs.
Well, I think that's the crazy alarm. All right, so I'm gonna say Stenhouse, because if anybody's not gonna take this as a test session, if everybody's looking at this as a test session, or hey, I'm gonna really not race a whole lot, that just reeks of a place where Stenhouse should be competitive and should actually run better than what a lot of people think. And that, going into this week, 12th, 11th was my kind of position, to where if Stenhouse is behind that, I might end up playing Stenhouse. And I would really, well, not might, I probably am going to play Stenhouse if he's outside the top 12.
All right, Jason. Who's a must play if they start outside the top 12?
I like that call, and with the same logic, I'm going to say Eric Jones. Jones is a guy who's shown the ability to have some good runs at road course races. He's going to run hard. He's got something to prove. He's in the 43 car now, a new ride. He wants to show out good. Everybody's talking about how he's taking a step back in his career. So he's obviously going to be one who I don't think is going to take it as a practice and is going to race pretty hard. He's probably going to be overlooked by a lot of people. So I definitely like Jones if he's starting back around 16, 15, somewhere around there.
All right. And then the third part. If blank starts top 5, he is a must fade.
Ooh, if blank starts top 5.
And obviously it's hard because we don't really have pricing and all of that, but
let's go. I mean, can I take the easy one and go Eric Amarola? But I don't think nobody's going to play him anyway. So I'm going to say Brad Keselowski. If Keselowski starts top 5, I think he's going to draw some attention. He's going to draw some ownership, and I don't think his road course ability has really shown up that much to where he's going to, where I can see him going backwards from that starting position. And I think his ownership will be pushed a little higher the closer he starts to the front. So I'm going to go BK.
Brandon?
This isn't my answer. I do want to bring this up. If Elliott starts inside the top 5, he should be the highest owned driver. And if that's the case, Elliott's going to be played a lot anyway. But if he starts in the top 5, a lot of people are going to play him. And if you're playing tournaments and you don't want to tie since his ownership's going to be that high, I would argue that Elliott would probably be the preferred play and just play the field against Elliott's and hope he makes a mistake. But I would say William Byron. If he starts in the top 5, I could play him.
William Byron. And you kind of almost got into my next game that we're going to do in a sec real quick. But okay.
Ahead.
I mean, you guys just read my notes, read my brain. I don't know how it works. But so we'll recap that real quick. So Jason has, if Chase starts on the pole, he is a must play. Brandon answered that with Ryan Blaney. Jason has, if Eric Jones starts outside the top 12, he is a must play. And Brandon went with Ricky Stenhouse on that. And then for the last one, Jason has, if Brad K starts inside the top 5, he is a must fade. And Brandon, you have William Byron on that. So we'll kind of keep track of that. We're going to do something similar to that every week. I don't know exactly how we'll do it, but we'll do something similar and try and keep track of the season of how we do. But this is the next part of the game. I got three percentage questions, and it's going to be, I'm going to ask you here. It's just easier for me to do it. So Jason, I'll start with you. I was going to go try and explain it, and then I'm going to explain it, and I'm just going to do it. So I'm just going to do it. Nike, just do it. Nike, if you want to sponsor us, let us know. If Chase Elliott is blank percentage owned, I will be underweight.
If he's 66% owned, I'll be underweight. I mean, I think that's probably where he's going to go at. I think he's definitely probably going to be 66% owned. I mean, everybody's going to push Chase, and to think otherwise is wrong. I mean, he's won 4 in a row, these things. Everybody's going to be on him, and I think once he starts getting that high, it's definitely, you got to look for reasons to fade him. I don't think I could fade him if he's on the pole, obviously, but I think if he's qualifying, like I said, in that 6 to 12 range. I mean, we saw at this track, I know it was a different package. Last season, he started 7th and didn't make it to the front until the 3rd stage, and I believe that was by pit cycles. I think he got up to like 4th and then pitted early on the 4th, and then he stayed out on the 1st stage. That's right, he got the lead, and then Hamlin resumed back once he pitted, and then I don't think he didn't make it up. Restarted 19th on the 2nd stage and ended up getting back up to about 4th by the end of that stage. So I still think even if he starts in that 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th range, I still think everybody's going to be on him, and I think that is when you can try to fade him because the PD's potential is not there, and I don't think he can rack up a ton of Dom points either.
All right, Brandon, at what percentage of Chase Elliott are you underweight?
So I'll go a little bit into detail here with my strategy. I think the Clash, if you're playing it for fun, go right ahead. If you're someone who wants to really make a profit on DFS for NASCAR, I think this is probably the worst slate for that. I know it's the start of the season. I know you're going to want to play a lot, but I would really advise to not invest a whole lot of money. I'm certainly not. This is probably the least amount of money I'll play all year on this Clash slate. For example, that $8 contest in DraftKings right now, I have Elliott projected for 68% this weekend. That's just me not really listening to anybody. Obviously, we're recording this on a Thursday before the season starts on that Tuesday, but I would imagine he'll be around 68%. If that's the case, that's like 15,000 lineups with Elliott in it. And if he starts, I mean, if he starts with 68% ownership, obviously if it's in the back of the field, you kind of have to eat that chalk. If it's in, like I just said, the top 5 or something, I think the play would be to not play him. I'm only going to play one lineup opening this season just because, like I said, I think it's a bad slate. And I'm probably going to fade Elliott unless he's starting in the back. And so whether his ownership it would be like 30, 40, 20, 50, whatever it is, I'm not going to play him.
All right. So for the next part of this question, Jason, and so this is going to be a little roller coaster, so you have to bear with me, but we'll get there. If Martin Truex starts on the pole and Chase Elliott starts between 7th and 15th, I expect to own how much of Martin Truex?
Oh, man. Well, I'm probably like 33%. Is probably where I'll be at. I'm only playing probably 3 lineups, so it's weird to talk percentages when I'm only playing 3 lineups. But I think once he goes into the pole position, you're going to see a bump in his ownership, and he may be up to like 45, 50%, something like that. I might throw one lineup with Truex in there, but I think at that point it might justify the fade and try to play somebody like a Denny or a Kyle Busch, something like that.
And obviously, when we're playing more lineups later in the year, these percentages will obviously be more, in terms of what we're actually doing, and not just am I playing them or in 3 lineups, I'm playing them in 1, that kind of stuff. But Brandon, your interest in Martin Truex Jr. if he starts on the pole and Chase Elliott is between 7th and 15th?
I would certainly have interest. I mean, like I said, I'm not really taking this slate too seriously in a sense. Like I think I'm going to play maybe 3 contests at max. Obviously the 8 and then maybe some single entries if I find it. Looking at it in a sense of a tournament play, I would imagine, obviously I think these guys are going to be the more higher priced people going into the weekend or into the race. So let's say if Chase, is close to 12,000, I would imagine MTJ to be anywhere from probably 10.8 to 10.2, 10,000, maybe 9.6 at the low end of his pricing. So if that's the case, I would imagine a lot of people use those 2 drivers as their quote-unquote dominators, or at least the guys they're paying up for. So that might be a situation to where he might end up being higher owned because people are assuming, oh, well, I got to play Chase Elliott. He's going to lead a lot of laps. And then depending on who's around Truex, it would be, oh, well, Truex should lead laps until Elliott gets up there. And so you might actually see Truex's ownership rise with his combination of being played with Chase Elliott.
Yeah, I think it's very safe to say that the majority of lineups are going to start Chase Elliott 1 and then either Hamlin or Truex 2. I think the vast majority of Chase lineups is going to be paired with a Denny or a Truex. So that's kind of why my strategy is to go off of those guys and pick somebody else to pair with Chase, because I think Chase is kind of a very low bust potential, and Truex and Hamlin seems like the little bit higher risk. Not risky, obviously they're great, but there may be a little bit of more opportunity for bust there than Chase is.
So that kind of leads into the last question I have for you guys, and I'll start with Brandon on this one. Brandon, what driver not named Denny Hamlin, Martin Truex, or Chase Elliott is most likely to win this race?
I'd say Keselowski. I really like Keselowski a lot. He's had some bad breaks at road courses lately, but I like Brad Keselowski. He doesn't get enough respect on the road courses anymore.
Jason?
I go Kyle Busch, baby. It's the Busch Clash, right?
Sometimes the reasoning is just simple, right? All right, so before we wrap things up, any drivers we didn't really talk a lot about that you think we should mention? I know this isn't a huge race, and we'll get more into the Daytona 500 and other than that in future episodes. But anybody here, Brandon, we didn't really talk about we should mention?
I think people should pay attention to where Austin Dillon is. Obviously, I think he was in a GTM class. I don't remember. He ran the 24 Hours of Daytona this past week, and I know that's in a different car, that's at different speeds and everything, but actually being one of the few drivers, and those few drivers are Elliott, Austin Dillon. I can't remember if anybody else ran the 24 off the top of my head. Jimmy Johnson, but he's not in it. Those are the three guys. So I believe it's Austin Dillon and Elliott, and I guess you could argue last year Kyle ran this in the 24 hours. But Austin Dillon and Chase Elliott are the two guys that have the most recent track memory of this race since they just ran the 24 hours just a few days ago. So, Austin Dillon should be a guy that you should at least consider in that, especially if he's low priced, if he's starting at a place, if you don't imagine a lot of ownership. Like if Austin Dillon starts ninth, I don't think it'd be crazy to play him.
Oh, no, yeah, he'll definitely carry that low ownership you're looking for, because you're going to have to look to try to differentiate yourself off the field. And going to that, I think him running the 24-hour race is definitely helpful, because he didn't race the road course race at Daytona last season, because I think that was COVID or something. So.
All right, Jason, anybody else we didn't talk about that you think we should mention, or did we cover pretty much most of them?
I mean, Byron's pretty good at this style of tracks. I think I'm definitely interested where he qualified. But from here, I think it's just a matter of seeing where the qualifying lineups shake out, and check out my content that I'll probably be releasing on Monday evening once that gets settled at freenascardfs.com, and we'll really zeroed in on some of these plays and fades. So.
Yeah, I think we kind of covered most of it. Like we said, it's not the biggest race of the year. It's kind of a good opening race to get your feet wet into NASCAR for those who have never played DFS or done any of this before. Obviously, there's a road course, so it is different, but kind of just to see how NASCAR scoring and all of that works and everything. It's a good kind of preemptive race for the season. We will be back with another episode for the Daytona 500 that will be coming to you as well. But for this episode, we thank you guys for joining us. Episode number 2 of hopefully many this year to be able to get you guys the best content for DFS, gambling, everything for NASCAR. Get all the information out to you guys, get it from a couple of different perspectives. So hopefully you guys enjoy the podcast. Any feedback that you have, positive, negative, anything, we're always looking to become better. Please, DM us, let us know, leave a review, subscribe, and you can give us a rating as well. We're now on iTunes as well, so podcasts are available on iTunes as well. So like I said, thank you guys for joining us. On behalf of Jason Hamlet, who is DFS NASCAR on Twitter, and Brandon Cruz, who is Brandon Cruz DFS on Twitter, I am Ryan Baumel, which you can find me at Gambling DFS Tips on Twitter. Thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you guys again for episode 3 for the Daytona 500. Peace out, guys. Thanks for listening.